Thank you, Mike. Thank you. We should go. We should do this. There you go. Okay, so I love the energy here. This is really the mecca of biotech here. Very happy to be here. Before I start my talk, I have a question for you. You're all leaders in your own organizations. You run companies. You run business units. And the question I would ask you is, when was the last time? Do you remember a time when your business unit, your company, was spending a fortune in marketing campaigns to try and gain market share or defend market share? Right? You're putting a disproportionate amount of your operating budget into gaining or retaining share. Meanwhile, you're not growing the market. Does it sound familiar? Yeah. So this is the situation I found myself in several years ago as a newly appointed managing director of a large biopharma company in South Africa. This was one of the premier companies in that country, and I was appointed to go and change things and get growth back again in that environment. South Africa was an emerging market. It was considered a country where you would invest to grow, much like India, China, and so forth. So here I was, 37 years old, my first real big job in the industry. And so before I continue the story, I just want to show you a slide that talks a little bit about my leadership journey. So there you have it. So the last 30-some years, you can see it all started in West Africa, where I grew up, and here I am in Massachusetts, in the mecca of biotech. A lot of countries, a lot of moves. The family stuck with me, thankfully. I really am grateful for them, to them, and a lot of lessons learned along the way. I'll tell you one example, or two perhaps. In West Africa, where I grew up, children are taught to listen to elders. Right? You don't challenge elders because elders know more. And then you go to the Netherlands, where I spent 7 years leading teams in that country. It's the exact opposite. In the Dutch environment, kids at a very young age are taught to challenge their parents and to challenge their teachers. Did you ever wonder why the Dutch don't make very good diplomats? This is the reason why. I learned that when I was in the Netherlands. But what the Dutch do have is that critical thinking mindset, right? So I learned it the hard way. I was in the Netherlands as a new leader, leading a big team, and I expected them to just follow me. I'm the boss. The Dutch are wired to challenge the boss, right? So if you want to get things done in that environment, you have to sell your ideas. You have to focus on the why we need to do what we need to do. And then they follow you, and they can execute like nobody else. It's a very important lesson that I carry to this day, which really has shaped the way I lead teams and the way I lead organizations. So, back to South Africa. Now, I'm here meeting with my new team. This is a team that had been very successful at gaining and maintaining market share, right? This is the story of the South African experience. As I went through business reviews, I realized that this team was not growing the business. They were doing very well in that environment, an environment where everybody was happy to just gain market share. And with deeper analysis, I realized that the core of the issue was the fact that the market that we were playing in was actually defined in a very narrow way, in a very traditional way. It was a market of 8 million people inside a country of 50 million. Picture this, right? It was 5 million whites, 3 million wealthy blacks and colored South Africans. This was our market. That was it. And all competitors were playing in the same market. So I came and said, what about the 42 million? What's up with them? Do they not need medicines? Okay, well, you fast forward 2 years after having implemented new approaches, after having hired new people, increased our capabilities, that company became one of the fastest growing biopharma companies in South Africa. It was really, really an important life lesson and leadership lesson for me. Make sure you ask critical questions. You do not accept the status quo. So I have summarized those lessons here on one slide. Ask those critical questions. Do not accept the status quo. Surround yourself with people who bring different perspectives. So the Dutch in me played out in that South African environment, okay? And create space for those people to express themselves and to ask those critical questions. If you do that, I guarantee you, you're going to be more innovative and you're going to grow your business. Now, here I am in Massachusetts, several years later. You saw that journey. Having joined Biogen now, a few months ago, I have to say, Biogen is a very special company. Biogen started 40 years ago as a pioneer in biotech and biopharmaceuticals. Biogen introduced a number of disease-modifying therapies that have really changed the lives of many patients around the world. I joined this company for several reasons. One is the promise of neurosciences. So when you think about it, society, we collectively have made tremendous progress in infectious disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer. We have made huge progress. When you think about neurosciences, so much more needs to be done. Think about folks who suffer from Alzheimer's, stroke, ALS, and the list is very long. In fact, neurologic diseases are the #1 cause of disability worldwide, and the second cause of death worldwide. So that really spoke to me. And Biogen is uniquely positioned with the capabilities that Biogen has, right? With the mindset and the focus that Biogen has to really be that company that's going to fundamentally change the reality of those patients. So that was really compelling. The second reason I joined Biogen really is that vision, of doing something for all patients, going global. Our new CEO, Michel Vounatsos himself, exemplifies that story. He's lived in a number of countries. He is a global thinker. And I can tell you, I asked him those critical questions. Within the executive team, we have that culture of asking those critical questions, of trying to move forward, right, for patients. And finally, the reason why I joined Biogen is to be part of this ecosystem here in Massachusetts. This is where it happens. This is the mecca of biotech. This is where the best of academia, the best of hospitals and business come together with venture capital. This is also where the state government has recognized the value of this industry and has created a legislative framework that encourages innovation and that encourages investments in this field. And people and talent from all around the world comes together here in Massachusetts to work on behalf of patients. Really compelling story. So I'm really happy to be here. One more thing that Biogen does that I think is very, very relevant to highlight in the context of diversity as a source of strength is the role we play in the environment, in the community, here in Massachusetts, but also in North Carolina. I'll show you a slide on that. The community lab. We recognize that the future leaders of science, the future leaders of research, are going to need to come from diverse backgrounds. We have a lot of work to do in that context. So Biogen recognized it. And over a decade ago, we started this community lab where our own scientists and experts volunteer their time to coach young high school students, to teach them about science, right? To inspire them so that they become the future scientists, the future leaders. And you can see more than 45,000 students have benefited from this coaching by Biogen scientists. More than 450 of our scientists are engaged in that process. We have partnerships ongoing with high schools from disadvantaged communities. So we attract boys and girls from diverse backgrounds, particularly the ones whose parents do not understand research, have not had the opportunity to develop that knowledge themselves. So this is really one of the initiatives that also attracted me to Biogen. I just want to end by really emphasizing this point once again, that by having people from different perspectives, by creating a space in which you ask the challenging questions, by bringing different perspectives into your teams and your organizations, you are going to be much more successful. So this is a quote that tries to exemplify that, one of my favorite. We see the world not how it is, but we see the world how we are. So you bring your own lens, you bring your own experiences to the situation that you have at hand. This is the reason why it's important to have people who bring different perspectives. If you do that, you're going to be much more innovative and you're going to grow the business in a much more sustainable way. So to end, I'd like to ask you that question now. If you go back to your own situations, you go back to your environments, your organizations, have you created this environment of inclusive leadership? Have you surrounded yourselves with teams of people that bring different perspectives? And have you created space for them to express themselves and to ask those critical questions? Thank you very much.